Welcome, everyone. So happy you're here. How has your week been? My week has been pretty good, really working hard. Um, I just had a job interview today, and it was kind of cool. I was praying about it, and I was asking God, okay, Lord, if you want me to be there, let it be an open door. If you don't, let it be a closed door. And I love walking through life and having that faith in God that everything happens for a reason, because when I learn to let go of control, then it becomes a lot easier. So, how has your week been? What's new? Ask me anything. Confessions and story time. Tonight, I was thinking about, sharing a story. When I was in my early 20s, I went to this church and it was so controlling and judgmental. I didn't realize it at the time. I was really young and kind of naive, as a lot of us can be. But I remember walking in the room and just feeling like they were looking at me up and down. And I remember they were really strict about what you wore and how you acted and the things that you said. And there was a lot of rules. It was really rule based. But I, I was really intrigued by it because as a young girl, I started reading the Bible when I had my daughter and she was growing inside of me. It was like such a miracle. And it really turned me into God. And I started reading my Bible and became more spiritually minded in that way. And when I went to this church, I was like, oh my goodness, it's great. But yet I was 1,500 miles away from home. And so I was really impressionable and vulnerable. And I was just kind of in this space where I believed anything anybody would tell me. I don't know if you've ever been in a position like that, but so it took me a while, but I realized how controlling and judgmental they became. And, sometimes you hear things like I even cringe sometimes when I see some Christians talk about, well, it's this way or that way, and it's either black or white. And it's hard because sometimes when we have this perspective, we don't necessarily know what's going on in somebody's life. So as you may have seen different pictures or learn about different things from time to time where, like I remember this one video I saw and this guy was running down the street and all of a sudden this other person was chasing him in the background. And if you looked at it from one angle, it looked like maybe the guy was going to rob from him or steal from him. But then the video replayed and it showed it from a different perspective. And it showed it kind of from looking up from above. And there was a big, huge box or something was going to fall on top of the guy. And so the guy ran up behind him and it looked like he was actually going to save him and trying to help the guy. So a lot of times we don't really have, our perspective. We only look at things in a certain way from our viewpoint, but we don't necessarily put ourselves in the shoes of others sometimes. And it happens to all of us. But, so sometimes that can then lend us to make choices out of haste, and we don't really think about it or put ourselves in the other person's shoes. So anyway, I just thought we could share that a little bit. I would love to hear your stories. If you guys have any questions, ask me anything. The other part of that, I wanted, confessions and story time. So confessions, fast forward, my daughter, she started dating. And when she started dating, I saw this guy and he was in a band and he had long black hair and he looked kind of gothic and kind of dark and kind of, controversial. And I was judgmental. And I judged him from what he looked like and what he wore, but I didn't get to know him. And a few years later, I was actually working in the same company and I actually became a supervisor and I actually really liked him. And he had matured a little bit and wasn't wearing, the same type of stuff. But how easy is it for us to just look and then judge somebody from the outside? And, I have both been on the giving and the receiving end of judging. And it's not very fun, but yet it's part of human nature. When we meet somebody, we have first impressions. And those first impressions can actually, be the seed that people look at us and they take us for face value for what the few seconds, the 5 minutes, the conversation that they might have had, but they view us that that's the whole conversation and who we are. For me in my life, I have changed a lot from my early 20s. I'm 50 now. That was like 30 years ago. I have changed so much. But if you knew me back then and I made a mistake, or maybe I was judging, like I judged my daughter for who she was dating, and I judged that guy. But sometimes what happens is we have that perspective, and that viewpoint of other people actually goes with us for many years. And then we think, well, they're the same person. That's who that is. But we don't really consider that maybe they've changed, or maybe they've grown, or maybe they've changed perspectives. Like in my family, I've got some estranged relationships, and, we may have had something that happened that caused that, but they don't come back and revisit it and say, okay, well, what's changed? How can we talk or work through that? So anyway, that was just something on my mind. And then also, speaking of like God's open doors and closed doors, like my friend and I, we were walking through the store today, and it was just after the job interview, and we went in, and the owner of the business, she struck up a conversation with me, and then she said, well, what do you do? And I shared with her about the classes that I teach, and the art classes, and what I do, and have helped other people with. And she told me right away, she's like, well, we can promote your website on our as a business, and you can come here and do classes. And so she invited me immediately. And for me, that was another open door that God had given me today, when I walk by faith and look at and ask God for guidance, and he guides us like that. So that was really, really awesome, and it made me feel good. I don't know, I've been just working really hard to create these classes and courses, and to be honest, I have some bills and I just need some income, and so I'm trying to make something work. And it I don't know if you've ever been like in a situation like that, but it's like we get so caught up in to just do that we let go. We can lose that faith and just kind of give it over to God, to have God take care of it, and we don't have to carry all that burden, right? I also think about judgment in our country, in our world right now. And I'm just going to be a little controversial with, Trump and Elon Musk and everything that's happening with Doge and what's going on. But, sometimes people can look at the fight or flight aspect, where they get so stressed out over one thing from their perspective, they have this viewpoint that, oh my gosh, they're controlling everything and they're taking all these jobs away. But if you can shift perspectives, like remember the guy who was chasing him down the road and you thought that he was stealing from him, but then you can shift perspectives, and it's actually, the guy was actually trying to save his life because a big, huge box was going to fall on his head. So I just want to encourage you to try to eliminate the emotional upheaval. That's really hard. It's emotionally heated. So many people are upset and rioting, and but I just want to encourage you to really try to look at it from a 50,000 foot view and ask yourself, could there be another reason? Is there another perspective? And if so, what could that be? Right? So I just want to encourage you that if there's somebody in your life, if there's some conflict, or conflict at work, conflict in your family, conflict in the world, can we look at it in a different way? Can we put ourselves in their shoes? Is there something maybe that we are projecting on others? When I was judging my daughter in her choice for a boyfriend, I actually was upset with myself because of the choices that I had made. And so a lot of times what we get upset with other people for is something that we're actually struggling with ourselves. And it's kind of hard to think about at that time because we think that we're not judgmental. Like I thought, well, I'm not a judgmental person. And I felt that way for so many years. But now that it's been 15 years since that point, I can now look back and say, you know what? I was just as judgmental as those people in church too. And so I think if we can take ourselves from that emotionally charged state that things have to be this way or have to be that way, and try to shift that perspective and look at it from a 50,000-foot view, then I think it can save ourselves emotionally from that emotional charge, and it can help us to just get along with the people, with our brothers and sisters around us in the world. And I just feel like it's my mission right now to spread kindness and to spread compassion and forgiveness. And one of the hardest people it's been for me to forgive is myself. It took a long time for me to come to terms with some of the decisions that I made out of fight or flight when I was in my 20s. But how I was able to overcome that is one of the tools that I use was to look in the mirror and say, I forgive you. I love you. I accept you. And a lot of it is just like I said earlier, where sometimes we project our fears onto other people. We project what we fear that maybe what we've done, and we have that guilt inside. And so what we need to do is really take care of, address that underlying factor, address that underlying thing that's happened. So those are some stories and confessions that I felt like I should share today. I'm going to post in the comments my featured items that I've been working really hard on. And I have to say, there is so much value. I finished this mini course on expressing anger. And I have so many resources and tools in there. There's a lot of value. It's got my personal mentors, information on that. It's got a guided meditation. It has 3 journals in there, prompts where questions that help you dive deep and to work through that anger. We have some deep dive conversations about what anger could be. Like, anger is part of the grief process, and so is depression, and so is what's that other word? So grief encompasses a lot of different emotions, and when you're angry, you might be experiencing grief. So check it out. I'm really excited about it. There's 12 steps. I call it my 12 steps to. It's called our. What I call it? Resentment rehab. 12 steps for resentment rehab. So check it out. I'm going to put the link in the comments. If you're watching this after live, would love to hear from you. What are some judgmental things that you've worked through? Either you've been felt judged yourself, or maybe later in life where you change that perspective, where maybe you had an aha moment and felt like maybe you were being too judgmental. So, all right, my friends, thank you so much for watching. Chat soon.